Let's go over number 8 and 9 for the graphing a circle worksheet. In this writing assignment, you're supposed to come up with 4 points on the circles and the center and the equation and all of that. And it's really not as bad as it sounds. Let's start with number 8. Number 8. Graph the circle with the center, -1, -2. So we're already told where the center is, -1, -2. And it passes through 0, 2. So if I go 0 and then up 2, so that's one of the points on the circle. Okay, -1, -2, and it goes through 0 and 2. Label the center and at least 4 points on the circle. Write the equation of the circle. Okay, well, first for the equation, if we remember, the equation is parentheses x plus or minus something squared, and then plus y plus or minus something squared equals the radius squared. Okay, so we need the radius. In order to find out how long this line is, we notice that we're going to the right 1 and up 1, 2, 3, 4. So we've got 1 and 4. And we can see, and I'll even zoom in because it's a small triangle, we can see we have the right triangle right here. Here's one leg, here's another leg, and there is the hypotenuse. So with that in mind, we can use the Pythagorean Theorem and say 1 squared plus 4 squared must equal, and I'm just going to say r squared for radius. Okay, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So 1 squared is just 1 plus 4 squared is 16, and that equals r squared. And 1 plus 16 is 17 equals r squared. So the radius must be the square root of 17. Okay, so that tells us, okay, we have the square root of 17 is how long this side is, but what information do we need to finish this? Well, if we remember, we talked about briefly this equation, x plus or minus something squared plus y plus or minus something squared equals the radius squared. Well, what is the radius squared? The radius squared is 17. So we know right here it's going to be 17. Okay, now what numbers do we put in here in the x and the y? Well, you just take the negative of whatever the center ordered pair is. So the ordered pair here is -1 for x and -2 for y. So the opposite of -1 is +1 for x, and the opposite of -2 is +2 for y. So there we have our equation for the circle. And that's always the way it is. If it's positive, we make it negative. If it's negative, we make it positive. And that gives us that. Okay, so now we think to ourselves, what are we doing to get this? We're going to the right 1 and up 4. Well, what if I just turned this 90 degrees? And I go to the right 1 and up 1, 2, 3, 4. And put another point. And then I turn it again. We go to the right 1 and up 1, 2, 3, 4. And then turn it one more time. To the right 1, up 1, 2, 3, 4. Each one of those points is going to end up on the circle. So that point, that point, that point, and that point will all be on the circle. Okay, and you can get it just by using the same slope. You know, rises 4 over 1, rises 4 over 1, rises 4 over 1, and so on. Okay, so just follow the same slope on the line each 90 degrees, and that gives you the distance that you need for the circle. So there's 4 points on the circle. Okay, so we got the equation, we labeled the center, and 4 points on the circle. So if we look at number 9, number 9 is looking for something similar. It just gives us different information. Okay, it says graph the equation with the diameter that has the endpoints, and it doesn't give us, the center. It's giving us endpoints. Well, the endpoints are -3 and 4. So -3, 1, 2, 3, and 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. There's one endpoint, and 5, -2. So from the center again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2. And we have our two endpoints. So this is the diameter, and it's best to use a ruler, but this is our diameter. And we want to say, okay, we want the equation for that circle. Well, we already have 2 points on the circle. That's not a problem. We just need 2 more. We know for the equation, it's going to be x plus or minus something plus x or y plus or minus something, and those are both squared, equals the radius squared. Well, how much is the radius? Well, it's going to be half of the diameter. Well, what do we, how do we find half of the diameter? Okay, there's 2 ways to do this, and I'll show you both ways. Okay, so here's the first way you can do it. If we say, all right, the diameter is this long, we say, okay, just like before, we have a right triangle. So we can say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So now we have 6 squared plus 8 squared equals, and we're going to say the diameter squared. Okay, and when we do the math, 6 squared plus 8 squared is 100. So that's the diameter squared. So if we take the square root, the diameter is 10. Okay, well, if the diameter is 10, then that means the radius would have to equal 5. Okay, and that's handy. That gives us a radius. So radius squared would be 25. So we can easily plug that in now and say, all right, that's going to be 25. Now, to fill in these, we take the negative of the x value of the center of the circle, negative of y. But our problem is where is the center of the circle? We don't see the center of the circle anywhere. It's somewhere right in the middle there. Well, to find that, you got to find the midpoint between those two. Okay, and the midpoint formula is just simply you take x1 plus x2 and take half of that, comma, y1 plus y2 and take half of that. Okay, so if we look back at our 2 lines, we see that we have -3, 4, and 5, 2. So this would be our x1, y1. This is our x2, y2. Okay, so now let's just plug them in. x1 is -3, and x2 is 5. -3 plus 5 is 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. So that's +1. Okay, we do the same thing with y. We have 4, our y1, and we have -2, our y2, divided by 2. 4 plus a -2 is 2. 2 divided by 2 is also +1. So now we say, okay, our center point is over 1, up 1, and that lands right on that line where we would expect it to. And that's the center of the circle. That's the midpoint between those 2 points. Okay, so now we have the midpoint. We know the radius is 5. Okay, and our midpoint is 1, 1. So up here we take the negative of each of the midpoint values. So the x is a +1, so we're going to take -1. The y is also a +1, So we're going to take minus 1 on that one too. So now we have our equation. Okay, and that's all you have to do. The negative of the center x value, negative of the y value. So that's 1, 1, negative 1, negative 1. Okay. Now we got to have 4 points, and that was part of the rule there. We got to have 4 points. Well, let's just see what we had to do to get to the 4 points. From the center, we went down 1, 2, 3, and then over 1, 2, 3, 4. So let's turn it 90 degrees. Go down 1, 2, 3, over 1, 2, 3, 4. There we have another point. And then doing the same thing, you can find the 4th point on the circle if you turn it right here. Okay, so that gets you started with 8 and 9. There's other videos on this worksheet. If you want them, let me know and I'll send it to you. Anyway, I hope this helps.